Hello, Emma. Welcome to Miracles Happen Fertility Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here
Hello.
today.
I am super excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, wonderful. And for those watching and or listening, this is Dr. Emma Brodzinski. We are going to be talking about shamanism within the fertility world today. I am so fascinated by this. I saw your writings in a Facebook group that we both belong in. And as soon as I saw that fertility shamanism is a thing, I'm like, oh no, I must know more. I must interview you. Let's talk. So that's why we have you here today. I'm so delighted. Can you start with, before we get into all those juicy things, and I'm sure your personal story is juicy too, can you just give us a little mini bio? Tell us who you are, what you do in the fertility world.
So I am Dr. Emma Brodzinski, and I am a therapist working from a shamanic perspective. So my background is more into kind of psychotherapeutic work, but I've always worked with kind of ritual and ceremony. That was my training, and more and more through my journey have gone more into shamanic practice, which really is about connecting with spirit fundamentally.
Yes. And I love this, of course, within the context of the therapy world. You and I was reading about, your work on your website, and I'm like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. That's me. Oh, she's me. We're me. It's like, we're the same. Yay. I can't wait to speak with a kindred spirit. Can you tell us about because you had your own fertility journey as well. And I saw pictures of your precious babies.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can enlighten folks about your own journey, just main points. You certainly don't need to tell all the sort of details, but just what you would like to share if possible.
Well, it was tough, as any fertility journey is. And it was my dark night of the soul. They talk, shamanically, we talk about being in those difficult places. And that certainly was one for me. And it did what a dark night of the soul does in terms of take you deep into yourself, and really took me to a place where I was on my knees, and so reached out for whatever I could. I mean, I kind of was in a place of like, I will do anything. And also in a place of, I cannot do this by myself, which was a massive thing for me, because I had always been an achiever, an overachiever, making lists, doing things, ticking them off. And this, I couldn't tick off my list. And so I then had to look wider, had to open up my perspective. And so this took me deeper in. I had my first shamanic journey during my fertility journey, and certainly has stayed with me since then, and turned out to be such a blessing. Although you would never wish this on anybody else, it can be an initiation into a whole new perspective.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I think that this is the language that everybody can relate to in this fertility world, because it really is the dark night of the soul. It really is this heaviness, this just a very, very difficult experience, which I don't know that there are words really to explain how heavy and dark this is.
No.
So can you tell us, and it's interesting, when I was reading again about you on your website, you said something about, I think it's like a phrase that I would use. You said, I had always been into woo-woo things, but, now I was, sort of prompted to research or see more. What is this about? And for me, it was like, well, I have nothing else to lose. So I don't know if that was your experience too, but.
I think for me, it was a little bit, it was a kind of desperation. It was was a thing of kind of, everything else is gone. So this is what's left. So I took that seriously, and as I say, I needed that support, and so that those practices, because you need, it's a place of, as we've said, it's really dark, it's really tough, and it's also this place of not knowing, which I did not sit well with, the kind of not knowing. I was an academic. It was all, to me, it's all about knowing, processing, understanding, and this was unfathomable. So kind of taking myself to a place where accepting the unfathomable, accepting that which is beyond understanding, which is not easy. I mean, I'm saying it like it is, but it isn't. But really kind of embracing that and going, okay, there are bigger things at work here, and I am going to tap into them, and I am going to ask for help, and I am going to get on board that. And as you say, I'm just going to throw everything at it. And so I, you know, as I've already confessed, I'm an overachiever. So I did all the things. So I did Reiki, and I did a craniosacral therapy, and I did, as I say, shamanic journeying, and I did moonlight rituals to the goddess. I was all over it. And it helped. It helped me. It helped me to feel that I was connecting with a higher power, something bigger than myself. And it helped me to have hope, which I think is what I needed, because it was a pretty hopeless place as the cycles come around every month. And the other part of it, as we then got later into it, I ended up going for IVF, which I very nearly didn't do, because it just filled me with horror. That because as I say, I've always had the kind of hippie spirit, but never kind of gone that far before. But it filled me with horror that my babies would come via medical intervention. Yeah, because for me it was always about thunder, lightning, the conception of my baby. You know, it's going to be magic. So I kind of made a deal with myself that going through that journey, I would call in the magic however I could. And so it was kind of, it was out of that kind of desperation, knowing that there was support there. I was like, okay, so I'm going to make this. Now I know there's magic out there. I'm going to make this magic.
Yes. Yeah. I love the combo of, and I used to be very, very heavy into the left brain, you know, science, but then pulling in that magic piece, I realized that actually science is kind of magical at times. There is magic in here. I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's where I got to. I think we went to our first consultation, and they showed you the hatch that it, you know, and I was like, yep. Oh Lord, this is full on, isn't it? And actually, I say I wanted it to be about a kind of a sacred moment, so that I could feel it surrounded with that. So that was what I was doing, and I do believe in the magic of IVF. I brought me my triplets. Like, you know, it is an amazing thing. So it's not that I was kind of dismissing that, but I needed it to be bigger than that. I needed it to kind of connect with what I knew was out there and had supported me on that journey, if that makes sense.
It makes beautiful sense. And P.S. for listeners and viewers, yes, she did say triplets.
Yeah. Yes.
This is from the one IVF cycle?
From one IVF cycle, yeah.
Holy moly. If that isn't magic, I mean, wow. Yeah. I'm sure we could do an entire episode on that, potentially in the future. Let's focus on the magic today of shamanism. I'm so curious about your perspective, and I'm certainly going to be pointing to your website and as part of the show notes. Folks, you guys need to read Dr. Brodzinski's take on shamanism and moving through the journeys. And we're going to talk about some of that today. But I'd like to get started on your definition of, or take on, can you tell us about shamanism and what is it exactly?
So it is many different things. My teacher talks about shamanism as being a kind of a revelatory process, so that for each person who is working, there isn't kind of a textbook. Your guides show you the way in which you will practice. And I just want to say again, I'm kind of working from a shamanic perspective, because I think what I want to honour is there's a kind of, there are the traditional practices which is handed down through the generations, and that is not my story. So I am coming very much through a kind of Western understanding, and really my understanding is more of a kind of Jungian understanding. So Jung really was a great shaman. You know, he was lecturing to the Viennese circle in the day and talking to Moses by night. You know, he was just kind of, he was there with the spirits. But
speaking my language.
But he talks, you know, he talks of the collective unconscious, and he talks of this ability to be able to connect with the bigger story. And so the collective unconscious is that sense of that we are all connected, and we all are able to tap into that source fundamentally, and or spirit, or however you can reference it in many different ways. So it's kind of that spiritual aspect of self, that we aren't just mind and body, we are spirit too. So that very much is what's really important in my work, and the fact that you are supported at a spiritual level. You have a whole team that are there for you, which still blows my mind. So my definition, if I have a definition at all, is it's a love story. It's about falling in love. It's about being in love with the world, with being in love with the fact that nature is so important too, in terms of the kind of the natural world is part of, has spirit, is part of that spiritual story. And yeah, I'm falling in love with yourself in terms of how much you are loved. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love how you describe that. You mentioned on your site that shamans come from the heart. They come from a very heart-centered place.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think because so much of that is missing on the fertility journey. We get so much in our heads.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Boxing, labeling, organizing, stepping, you know, first this, then that, then this, voila, baby. And it's not working. Right.
Yeah.
So we miss out on the heart space a lot.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And I think we go into our heads too. Well, I go into my head because it's so painful. The journey is so painful, and the heart is as we know, the heart is much simpler than the head too. So the heart just says, I'm in pain, or I don't understand, or it's not fair. It can't rationalize, it just feels the feelings, and that can be overwhelming at points. And so I think that we can often go into our heads, but it is important, as you say, to not lose that connection, because the heart is so powerful, and the heart is what can drive you on, because the heart is, but I want this, that this is my desire, this is my heart's desire for this. So it can be really simple and really focused. It's not it just doesn't do that. It just knows, it just goes.
That's right. It just, and it's not necessary to translate or to label or to anything. It's just there's so much clarity there.
And it can be a real source of power for you. Yeah.
Empowerment. Yes. Also, I like what you just said, because I'm thinking about somebody who they just emailed me, and what they were looking for some help because they had a failed cycle, and they were asking how to feel better. And I think it's one of those things in this journey that we tend to get into our heads again, right? Well, first do this, then do that, then do this, then do that. And my answer was, feel your feelings, feel what's happening, feel the broken heart, feel it.
Yeah.
It's there to guide you.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think part of what I know about, or what I've read about shamanism, is that you feel the fear and do the things anyway from this very heart-centered space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd like to know, I was really curious about, on your website, again, you were talking about this shamanic journey that you'd had, and among several, but the first one I think you were referencing on your site. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that. What is a journey, and what are some of the messages that you received and guidances that you received as part of that process?
Yeah. So, and it comes back to the heart, doesn't it? And the things really. So so I was on a journey in many ways, as we've established.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a go. I'm gonna give it a go. And the first journey that I took was a guided journey. So somebody talked me through this, and it was actually a group of us, a group journey. And shamanically, we believe in there are three worlds. So there's the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world, and you can journey to any of them. The lower world is a place really of healing, and where your power animals are. I think there's a lot of magic in all of it, but magic there. Middle world is our reality. So not our reality, where we are in terms of nature and the time that we're in now. And the upper world is where you meet mentors and teachers. So my first journey was into the lower world, and quite often journeys there are spirit speaks very much in metaphor, and well, to me anyway. So this is the other thing to say, is what is also gorgeous, of course, because it's your spiritual journey and your spiritual life, is that you will be communicated to in the right way for you. So some people hear things, some people see things, some people feel things. And I'm a very visual person, and so I see things. I do hear things too, but I mainly see things, really vivid images. So my first journey, of course, I didn't really know what to expect. So you go down, you find a tree, you always find a tree in your imagination, and you go down. And then, I mean, I love it. Now, of course, I've done a lot more, and it's just such a wild ride, and it's so gorgeous. So I saw lots of very vivid images, and I tend to write as I go. Because I don't want to forget anything. But at that time, I just immersed myself in it. It's still really vivid to me because it was kind of my first time. And lots of it is metaphor. So I remember the first thing I saw was this big fish, and there were lots of images that were related to water and fish, which is a symbol for fertility. So my question, because you always go with intention is everything shamanically. So I went with intention to find out, as the question, which I'm sure many people to relate to, was, will this ever happen for me? Will I be a mum? That was my question. Will I be a mum? So show me if I will be a mum. So there were lots of bits in the lead up to it, but the big thing that I remembered seeing was this woman who I realized later on was me. I didn't know it was me. I thought she was a sort of a spiritual sacred being, with children, one on her hip. I've got one like that, and two other sides, and a really vivid image of her, really beautiful. And I took from that, there are children here. There's children here. Of course, now reflecting on it, my girl has cerebral palsy. I have to carry her. Wow. and my boys at either side. So those were my children that I saw then, it was just wild. And lots of other things happened. I could go on and on about it, but what I got from that journey was fertility. I'm seeing fertility is there. It's really important. It was a sense of action and follow and being on a path and following a path So I knew I was on a path, because I was actually just about to start IVF, and it was an affirmation for me. Yes, go on this path. And there are children present. I say,
Wow.
I thought it was somebody holding my children for me, but you know, it was my children there. So it was really, really helpful to me, because it just comforted me at that soul level of kind of a sense of being spoken to, being seen, and it really meant a lot. I treasured it, and as I say, I still remember it really vividly now, and this is like 11 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It sounds quite intense in a loving, beautiful way.
Yeah. And it is very immersive for me. I say for other people, it's a different experience, and so everybody can journey. So because we're all spiritual beings, so it's not it is everyone can do that. But some people, I do journey for people, because some people, and I have people journey for me and kind of do readings for me, because sometimes it's harder I find it much easier to journey for other people than I do for myself. So actually, because you can listen more carefully, right, because you don't have you're looking out. So I do journey for other people, and either journey for healing, you can journey for healing, or journey, we call it divination journey. So journey with a question. So we set a question and go and journey either to the lower world or to the upper world. You could go, it works very much like kind of our reality, in that you can get a second opinion. Sometimes spirit, you know, it's kind of like, I'm not quite sure. There was one recently, and I knew this question was really important to my person, and I asked spirit, and they said, oh, that's not an important question now. And I was like, actually, I know she really wants some guidance on this. So I was like, okay, this is in the lower world. I was like, I'm going to the upper world now, I'm going to get a second opinion. And I got some more information from the upper world for her. And so you gather information, and then I just report back what I get. And then that sometimes is a lead in for people to journey for themselves, or gives them information that they can then work with.
That is fascinating to me. How can you all right, so here's my left brain saying, okay, what are the steps to get there? So how does one do, is this like a meditative state? Is this a guided meditation? How does one get into this journeying space?
It's kind of altered state, and you use drumming or rattling or whistling. So there's music that and actually what it's doing, I think scientifically, although I don't know this for sure, but you'll probably know better than me, it alters the brain pattern. So you're in an altered state, so that you are able to access that different reality. So the idea, the shamanic theory is the soul then is leaving the body, like it does with dreaming. So it's like a dream state. So, you know, shamanically, we see that dreams are journeys. And so I always say to people on a fertility journey, to pay special attention to your dreams, because they may be really vivid. So you will drum, you will rattle. I dance, because I'm quite a physical person, so it's quite useful to do that, because I have to get to a place where ego, it's not about ego, it's about spirit. So, and I know when I've got there, and then I can start the journey. So then you go either down into the lower world, or you travel up to the upper world, or go out into the middle world. And then the drum beat will play, and then it calls you back. There will be a call back on the drum. I use a recorded drum beat. So some people drum for themselves, or have someone drum for them. I always use a recorded one.
Okay, I wondered how that works. And so if you have clients come to you, and they want to journey on their own without you having to journey for them, do you also use the recording, or do you have a drum and rattle?
So I would use a recording for them, just because I am not a skilled drummer.
Okay. There's a skill to it. Okay.
Yeah. So I think just in terms of holding the beat pattern, and that's, I rattle. I have my rattle, but I don't have a drum that I use. I mean, I do have a drum, actually. That's not true to say I don't have a drum. I do have a drum, but not a drum that I use.
Okay. No drum skill. I feel like
exactly.
I would be similar.
There you are.
You also said something, this is like a tiny detail, but it fascinated me. You said that there are different drumming patterns, and the one drumming pattern is to call people back to their bodies. So
it will slow down to the beat. So there's a definite change of tempo, and then the callback speeds it up. So actually you'll go at the pattern, then you slow down, and that's the kind of, you need to come back now, so you can say goodbye, say thank you, of course. All the usual courtesies happen in there, and then it speeds up so that you come back, and you travel back up or you travel back down.
Oh, this is so fascinating to me. It feels similar to me as I do past life regression work with people. It feels similar to that, but it's your current soul that is traveling, and not, and I mean, in a past life regression, it's still your soul. You're just in a different lifetime and different body. But this is like, so I love this. This is amazing. So does it matter where folks travel, if they go down or out or up? Does it matter? Are you just drawn to where you need to go to get your answer? Or
yes, I think you can. I think it doesn't matter, but you'll get different kinds of information. As I say, the thing is, it's very hard to be dogmatic about it. So I can only talk from my own experience. So yes, I get different kinds of information. It tends to be, if I go down, I tend to get kind of, I will usually get somebody's power animal, which we talk about the medicine. So the medicine that the power animal brings. So shamanically, we believe that we are all kin, we all have this spirit, but animals are more close to spirit, so that they don't have the kind of the mind games that we have. So looking at their behavior, there's a purity in that behavior. So looking at the way in which animals behave brings us medicine. And so we for example, I had to give an example. So rabbit is a big symbol of fertility, and so rabbit is about kind of can be a lot about fear, but about knowing when to take a step and when to retreat, being resourceful, because rabbits are really resourceful, being able to kind of negotiate terrain, etc. So what if rabbit appears as your power animal, that's the medicine that you need at that time. Does this make sense?
Oh my gosh, that makes beautiful sense. Yes.
And quite often
I have a medicine card oracle deck that's all animals. Yeah.
Right. And the thing is that nature loves us. We are loved so deeply. If you can tap into that at all, and you may have got that kind of feeling just from flowers, having a bunch of flowers in your house, you can just feel the good stuff emanating from the flowers. So nature loves us, and nature knows what's going on for us. So quite often people on their fertility journey, because at these moments we kind of shamanically at kind of transition points, and especially when we're looking to call a soul into the world. So this is the ultimate shamanic act, right? Incarnating a soul. You may find animals appear to you, and they're there to support and help and bring you medicine to help you on your way. So just pay attention to the animals that come across your path, and pay attention to the sort of medicine they may be bringing to you. And you kind of, I'm just laughing because my teacher always says to me, you must never look up on the internet. Don't do it. Don't look it up. I always do. So I'm kind of a bit naughty. But what she's saying is that you must pay attention to the way in which that animal is behaving, because that's the particular medicine that's coming to you, rather than taking a kind of a generalized view from the internet. But you can look it up. So I think, especially, I always go for the rule of 3 as well. So the third time you see it, you're kind of, that definitely is for me. That definitely is for me. So yeah. I know people have seen squirrels, robins, all sorts, butterflies, all sorts of animals, and yeah, that's a blessing. That's a blessing. That's spirit telling you that you are loved and spirit is near.
Yes. Oh my goodness. This is I talked to clients and actually talked about on my podcast too, that about a year ago I kept seeing over and over and over the bird raven, over and over and over. And I also like Dr. Googled it. Like, what does this mean? But it was like perfect.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful image. Yes.
Yes. And it was perfect for exactly where I was in my life.
Yeah.
I think this is also going to be helpful for when I do spirit baby work, because I often see animals and I didn't think about the symbolism of that.
Yes.
Wow.
And the animals might be with the baby, exactly that, because it's the medicine that's needed to make the connection, or it's the medicine the baby is bringing into this situation. It's really, really, that makes absolute sense that you see that.
I didn't even think about that. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. Are you able to give any examples of, anonymously of messages or information that people have come away with in their work with you?
So much. What's really wild, and you will know this too, is how different it is for everybody, because you're going into different people's energies. So it's very, very different for everyone, and you can't ever make any promise about what's going to happen. And also it's going to be particular for that person at that time.
Yes.
And so yeah, all sorts of different things. I mean, some people, I've had direct contact, as you say, with spirit babies. Sometimes I see the babies. Sometimes I'm able to talk with the babies and they're able to give messages. Things like people asking how to make a connection with their babies. And I've had some very clear answers on what people can do in order to do that. Often, of course, because these women are people who are tuned in anyway, they're like, yes, I just started to do that. Oh, yes, I did. I have just started doing this painting, or yes, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's keep doing that. That's the thing. What else to say? I'm trying not to give specifics, obviously, because I want to honor people's journeys. Right. Sometimes I say, also, as we know, spirit sometimes gives us work to do, and that's not always welcome, because really you just want the answer. But sometimes spirit says, actually, this is what you need to kind of look at. This is this particular relationship, for example, that you might need to do some work around, this particular person. But always with love. It always comes with such deep love and this sense of kind of that you are known and you're seen. And so I don't know if that's enough, if that's helpful. I mean, I could go on and on, but
I know, I'm sure you could. I think what I'm gleaning from what you're saying is that there's all this all comes from a place of love and guidance. And it sounds quite familiar or similar to when I do spirit baby work with people, is that they already really know that, what they need to do, or that they're on the right path. And this is just loving confirmation for them.
Exactly.
Quite empowering.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that sense of, yep, you're doing the right thing, keep going. And also, sometimes there are ancestors that step forward Again, people often say, oh yes, no, because I was just talking about him yesterday, or he came to me in a dream a couple of nights ago. And it's like, yeah, he's here, he's here for you. He's, you know, I've seen ancestors holding people's babies. They're looking after them just till you're ready. They're being looked after. And so yeah, so that's another thing that can happen.
Oh my gosh, that happened to me. Just like, it was in a dream though, as you were saying that.
Dreams are really, really powerful, and I think don't underestimate that, especially if ancestors come to you. Because the other thing that blows my mind and is gorgeous is that spirits volunteer to support us. They don't have to come. They're not projected in. They're like, no, that's my girl. I'm going to look after her. I'm going to step in and do so. If someone comes to you in a dream, they've volunteered to do that. They want you to know their presence, and they want to support you and send you their love. So to kind of honor that and say, yeah, you're here, and to just really be receptive to that. Another thing, I used to have a Jungian therapist who was just gorgeous, and she taught me to always say thank you for my dreams, and to respond to them in some way. So that I always encourage people to do. In terms of, it's just as I'm sure we all know, but sometimes we forget. But this kind of gratitude is such a powerful force, and so to either draw something about your dreams or journal about your dreams and be open and thankful for them is really powerful, and it obviously invites more, because if spirit has made the effort to come visit you, and you say, oh, thank you so much, come again, you can have a conversation. And that goes for your animals too. You might want to leave them some treats and some offerings. Shamanically, offerings are really important. Or you might want to have little images in your house of the particular animal. You know, for your raven, you might want to have an image of your raven, just so that you can kind of be grateful and be honoring that presence.
It's so funny too. I don't know if you've run into this with clients or yourself, but when things like that happen, and I'm quite open and I pay attention, but with the raven, I was, it's just a raven. and it kept coming and coming and coming more forcefully, to the point where one day around my office, I decided to take a walk during lunch, and I walked into an art store that I had never been into before, just decided to meander in there. And there are just raven pieces, sculptures, paints, stuffed animals everywhere. And I was like, what? I asked the person that worked there what the raven thing was about. And they're like, yeah, ravens are theme here. I'm like, what?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And yeah, absolutely. And I think that things start by kind of tapping lightly, and then they can come right up in your face. And so, yeah.
Yeah, they get a little louder. And, I mean, they did for me. So that I was like, hello, pay attention to this. So that's when I was like, all right, let me look up what this means. And it made perfect sense for where I was.
Gorgeous.
So, good. Well, the overriding message that I'm getting from you today is that there is a sense of empowerment when one journeys, and it doesn't have to look like this very. I was going to ask you actually what a session with you might look like, a shamanic session, but even, and we'll get into that. But I'm wondering about also, even if people don't have a formal, shamanic session, that they pay attention to dreams, that they pay attention to symbols and things coming to them in their waking life. And those are all guidances.
Absolutely. And because we are all spiritual beings, having an earthly experience. Yeah. And so you have that. And all those spiritual nudges that we have every day to kind of to honor that. And I think this is so important on a fertility journey, because we are bombarded with information. We don't know what to do with it, and we don't know what to trust, and we don't know what to believe. And I just believe yourself, trust yourself, as in your heart, as in your connection to spirit. That's, you can really trust that. Really go with your intuition. It is your superpower. So, and yes, and that will come through dreams. It will come through just being open and opening a book at the right place for you, having that conversation. Rule of 3, if you're kind of keep hearing about this thing, that's a nudge for you.
Love it. Yes, that's a big takeaway. Rule of 3. So what does a shamanic session look like for folks who've never delved into that? Most of my listeners and viewers are really into spiritual stuff, but just in case, what does it look like?
For me, what I do is I will talk about and we'll formulate a question together, because questions are really important. I say intention is everything. Questions are really important. And my teacher tells a brilliant story about questions, that someone came and said to her, should she get married to this person? And so a teacher went away, talked to Spirit. Spirit said yes. So she went back and said to the client, yes, get married. And then the client came back a few months later and said, this was an absolute car crash. It was awful. It was terrible. You're a fake. And my teacher was like, blimey, okay. Went back to Spirit and said, well, why did you say to do that? And Spirit said, because it was a brilliant learning opportunity. So she's learned all about disappointment. She's learned all about pain. And so you have to be quite careful about what you ask, because if you ask, shall I do something? Spirit's almost certainly going to say yes, because Spirit sees it as a learning opportunity. So you have to be a bit careful about how you formulate questions. Show me is quite a good sort of question. Anyway, so we'll talk through what's a useful question, and just kind of preparing your heart for that journey session. Then I journey for somebody, and then we have a session when I come back and I feed back what I have received. And then often we don't always do that, but I like to have then another session after that where we're just kind of processing that, because quite often a lot of deep stuff comes up, and we can kind of process that after. But the actual journeying, I do the journey for people if that's what they want me to do, or we can work together and go through a process. Quite often, if people haven't journeyed before, would be more of a visualization process I would do with somebody. Okay. So that kind of that actually in visualization it's more about a mind journey, but you still can go to some quite deep places. Yeah. Wow.
Very cool. Fascinating. Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for all of this beautiful information. I'm sure I could talk with you for hours. This is all fascinating to me. Are there any words of imparting wisdom or hope that you might have for listeners and viewers today?
Well, I think just to say you are loved, you are deeply loved, because I think sometimes we get to the place on a fertility journey where you doubt that, you feel really alone and you feel abandoned, but you are loved and you are supported. It is there. Reach out for that, and trust your intuition, trust yourself.
That's a very big one. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Emma. I really appreciate you. And
thank you too.
I can't wait for folks to hear what you have to say about this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.